Clark County is being rebuilt in multiple places at once. We have new master plan communities, we have the downtown and the waterfront redevelopment going on, and a lot of major infrastructure projects that are already shifting the daily life here in Southwest Washington. And in the next few years, we will see certain neighborhoods get so much more competitive. All right, I'm Hayden Humphrey, your Southwest Washington real estate advisor. I help buyers, sellers, and relocating families understand not just what's happening today here in Southwest Washington, but what this region is becoming in this next phase, so you can make a smart decision and investment before all those changes hit at once. Okay, guys, we're going to first start with the master plan communities. You know, the biggest mega projects in Southwest Washington right now are not the single lot subdivisions that we constantly see. Instead, we have master plan communities that are being built out currently that operate like a full town. So I want you guys to take Ridgefield, Washington, for example. And what we notice with Ridgefield is the growth doesn't spread evenly. If we look at that Pioneer Strip, basically the main vein into Ridgefield, and if you look at that and how much growth there is with the housing, the retail, you know, we have the Costco, we got the In-N-Out there. It's completely different from downtown Ridgefield, which essentially hasn't been touched the same. So the question is, how does this affect the communities nearby? We've noticed resale homes near these growth plains, they really start to compete. They compete with new construction, the layouts, the builds, and honestly, the builder incentives that they have. Buyers tend to pick the growth lane first, and then they pick the house. Now let's talk about Ridgefield, because it's one of the most obvious growth corridors within Southwest Washington and the entire region. Ridgefield has master planned itself for long run growth. All the city planning that's going on in Ridgefield is basically the blueprint for why it keeps expanding, because realistically, they're not even close to being done yet. Ridgefield becomes a destination for people who are looking for a newer house, more space, but still having I-5 access. And alongside all that growth, we have the schools and the services that are also growing too. So with all the new people that are flooding to Ridgefield, sometimes there's little things like the roads and the schools and overall services. They're not quite caught up yet with how many people are moving to the area. So that's where we kind of see the surprise friction that might show up for any newcomer. And then what we do with that is we simply wait for the town and all the planning to catch up. Now let's move from the volume growth lane to the scarcity growth lane. Because a couple towns over, as the bird flies, Camas is expanding a lot differently than a place like Ridgefield. Camas is adding hundreds of new homes, from townhomes to single detached family homes. This is huge because Camas rarely has new inventory, and demand over there in Camas is always strong. Second, that massive rock quarry project, that's a large multifamily development with insane views going up the Camas-Vancouver border. And quite honestly, it's one of the biggest visual changes happening right now that a lot of people see on the daily. Every single time I have a client touring in Camas, they always comment on it. And third, downtown Camas is really growing up. There's new housing being added right near downtown, which means more walkability, more restaurants, and overall more energy, without losing that small town Camas feel that we love. And lastly, Crown Park upgrades a new fire station and long-term planning through 2045. And all these things point to one thing: Camas is growing intentionally and not randomly. So now we're going to transition into a project not many people talk about or know about here. And this is called the Main Street Promise. So what's happening on Main Street in downtown Vancouver? Basically what's happening is they're completely rebuilding Main Street to make it these three things: to make it more walkable, safer, and overall better livability. And a layout that actually supports local businesses instead of high traffic and cars just ripping right through. This matters because when cities invest heavily into a downtown corridor, it usually means more housing, better retail, and higher demand over time. And essentially, you're creating a place where people actually want to live and not just drive past. So while it might feel inconvenient during construction, long-term, this is one of those projects that quietly raises the value and the vibe over the entire area. Okay, guys, I get this question all the time. Is Vancouver building a Pike Place market on the waterfront like the one that's up in Seattle? And the short answer to that, unfortunately, is no. But let me explain what's actually going on here, because it is super cool and it's not done yet. The Vancouver waterfront is a long-term master plan development. This isn't one of those one and done projects. It's being built in phases over years. So let's start with what's already done. The very first phase was all about the public access to the river. All of that build out was intentional. The city of Vancouver really wanted to see that open, walkable, and usable for everybody. And then came the first wave of restaurants and bars and all the mixed-use buildings. Now here's the most important part. A lot more is still on the horizon. The plan includes more housing, more retail, and more public areas. There's also taller residential buildings that are currently under construction right now. Now, one of the biggest future pieces is what's called the Gateway area, which is basically connecting downtown Vancouver more to the waterfront. That means more housing, and eventually more neighborhood style type of retail. And this is really important to know if you are relocating here. This isn't happening next year. This is more of a 2030-ish type of build out. And naturally development slows, speeds up, and changes over time. But the overall vision right now is still very much alive and clear. And if you're visiting here and thinking, well, this kind of feels unfinished, you're not wrong. It definitely is unfinished. So if you're thinking about moving to Vancouver or Southwest Washington, or are just simply curious about how different neighborhoods compare with each other, especially the newer developments that are like this, you're welcome to drop a comment down or reach out. My wife and I live here, we raise our family here, and we are open to give you our honest opinions and thoughts. Okay, so now that we talked about the urban core transformation, let's talk about the mega project that is going to transform both sides of the river. The Interstate Bridge Replacement, also known as I-5. Okay, quick rundown on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, because this is going to affect everybody who drives or who invests here. They are replacing the I-5 bridge with 2 modern bridge spans. So overall, we're going to get wider lanes and biking and walking. Secondly, let's talk about the timeline. The construction is expected to start 2026 this year and 2027. And the new bridge should be open in the early 2030s. Third, let's talk about the traffic impact this is going to have on you. So during construction, the traffic is probably going to be pretty tight, a lot more traffic, especially during those peak hours like rush hour for work. And then fourth, long-term value. Over the long term, this is really important. Overall, we're going to see better traffic flow, safer infrastructure, and improved transit connections. And to be honest, the projects like this usually benefit the people who get in before the project's actually finished. All right, now that we've covered the I-5 bridge, let's go one layer inside Clark County. So the projects that are going to recenter the daily life people live here without looking like those mega projects. So I briefly wanted to touch on the Clark County Fairgrounds. And right now it's mostly used for the Clark County Fair and a handful of different events. But the county is actually in talks right now, kind of thinking about reimagining it as a year-round destination for people. Think more events, community spaces, possibly mixed-use development, and a better use of a huge piece of centrally located land. And for homeowners nearby, projects like this can mean increased activity, better infrastructure, and long-term value growth. Now, we're still in the early talks right now, but this could quietly become one of those projects that could completely change and activate any of the surrounding area. All right, with the Clark County Fairgrounds not being a really popular subject, we're going to move on to one more that a lot of people seem to be overlooking, and that is the East Fork Lewis River Project. So this is a really huge one that is actually flying under the radar right now. This is a major environmental and recreation project, which is going to be focused on restoring the river, reducing the flood risk, and in Washington, that's huge, and improving trails and outdoor access. And they're actually reconnecting different sections of the river that were taken away years and years ago. Projects like this typically boost livability and long-term appeal. Now, some of the most important mega project work is underground and behind the scenes. Now, the utility capital planning and system programs shows how much work is being lined up to maintain and expand capacity. Now, while this isn't really huge news and might not be super important to you, this is going to really impact the city. The utility capacity is definitely a growth gatekeeper. Now, the areas that can scale water, sewer, and stormwater capacity are the areas that can actually absorb future housing and overall more demand. The flood and stormwater management increasingly affects what gets built. So while these upgrades don't create that instant wow type of moment, they protect long-term liquidity. Now, overall, the market quietly rewards neighborhoods that age well over pressure. So Southwest Washington and Vancouver, it's not just growing. It's being recentered around new anchors like the waterfront redevelopment and overall growth in downtown Vancouver, and extended outward through high-capacity growth lanes. While the biggest divider is that infrastructure that reshapes the community and the overall commute reliability and what is convenient day to day. And that's why real estate outcomes won't move evenly. And the market is really going to be different based off of your lifestyle, right? what's convenient to you, what's walkable, where do you work, your daily life conveniences, it's all going to be shaped by what's happening right now. So the biggest question is, how do we avoid buying something that we'll end up regretting later? I think when you're purchasing, it's important to buy the daily routine and not the fancy listing that you see. It's really important to consider all those projects that are surrounding the home, including those commute times and those daily conveniences that you love. And I think it's important to ask yourself, are you buying in the pocket of opportunity or not? So with all these mega projects going on, as a seller, how do you position yourself to make the best sale possible? It's important to sell the future convenience story and not just sell the house. A lot of buyers that I meet on the day-to-day, their interest in the access to everything and the overall type of lifestyle you live while purchasing and living in that house. All this stuff will help your listing feel like a location upgrade and not just a house. And when I personally take on a listing, I think it really helps when you're able to sell a lifestyle and not just a property. And I think it's also important as a seller to be honest about those trade-offs. Now, mega projects are one of my favorite things to talk about, and I'll tell you why. Mega projects can create opportunities that can make a really good investment, especially with real estate. One of my favorite things to do is look at these past sales, years and years ago, homes that I've sold, and looking at how much equity these buyers have because they bought in the right area. And this is one of my favorite things about doing what I do as a real estate agent. This brings me a lot of passion to my job. Now, I'm a top producing agent here in Vancouver, Washington. I've seen both great investments be made, but I've also, on the other hand, have seen not so great investments be made. And through all the clients that I've worked helping them buy and sell their homes and all these mega projects coming in, I've noticed a pattern. Typically, surrounding mega projects comes a lot of opportunity. And obviously, assessing that type of project versus, hey, should I invest my money here, is going to be your most critical thing. My name's Hayden Humphrey. I'm a local top producing real estate agent here in Vancouver, Washington. Now I live here. My wife and I work together here as real estate agents. We raise our family here, and we're very passionate about having as much knowledge as we do about Southwest Washington and Clark County. And if Vancouver and Southwest Washington, or maybe the surrounding suburbs, are of interest to you, I've actually made a great relocation guide. It is chock full of information if you're thinking about potentially making a move here. And you can download that below. And if you've already watched the videos and you are ready to make a move, you're welcome to reach out. Feel free to call, text, or shoot me an email. Thank you for watching. We will see you on the next video.